enforce it across the board. If somebody's in violation, let them know. And most people, when you approach them and say, you're in violation, they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll straighten it out. Other people, unfortunately, don't. But as far as the existing board, I don't know that the existing board has ever taken a position or had a vote on enforcing the covenants as written.
Any other comments on the question?
Yeah,
Still one more before you finish.
Okay.
My name is Billy Waverly, and I got a question for the election committee and the people that voted. You sent out the questionnaire that had 2 questions on it, and requested that everybody send that back in to you. First of all, why did you need that back before this? And did everybody fill it out and send it back to you? And if not, why?
Everybody gave me their written answers, and we did that again. Everybody handed me a written copy of what they just read, and we did that again to be fair and equal with all the candidates. We felt that by doing so, if Pat, if I may use your name, if Pat wrote and Pat answered and Harris thought, gee, that sounds great, I think I'll say the same thing. Or I think I'll say I agree with Pat. And we felt that we wanted each candidate to put their individual thoughts on paper, and they had until 6:30 tonight to do that. We felt that in that way, the audience, the residents, would hear everybody and listen to everybody answering exactly the same question in prepared answers that they hadn't changed at the last minute. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for Elton. A little bit ago you were talking, and maybe I'm a little slow or something, or couldn't quite hear you. What was that when you were talking about the people coming to the Cove here? How would you like make them welcome? You used the term, I would mentor them. Mentor them how?
I don't know about you, but I still feel young enough that I could look for some advice sometimes. And young people, whether they know it or not, sometimes need advice. When I was in the military, I think the best part of the military life that I can recall had to do with the fact that you lived in a little bit of a structured community, and you knew who the people were that were experts at different things, and you knew where to go. And you go for advice, you go for help and counsel, you go for mentoring if you want to really admit that you need help. And so that's all I was talking about, is the fact that, hey, you know, we got a great bunch of folks here that have all kinds of experience that they ought to be willing to share, and they are willing to share if you just ask. That's all I meant.
Okay.
Terry Carr.
Yes, sir.
People have been talking about the president of the board, and I'm a little confused. If you have a president of the board, what are their duties? What do you see their duties? It sounds like some of the board members feel they're president, but it takes the whole board to do anything, that president can't act on his own on anything. But it seems to me, the few years we've been here, every time I come to the community center, whoever the president is at the time is usually here. I mean, he's like here full time, or she. So what are the duties of the president?
I think the first and foremost, I think first and foremost the duty of the president is the health of the community overall. That person needs to make sure that The covenants, the bylaws, Robert's rules, state laws are strictly adhered to. Those covenants and bylaws are here for a purpose. They serve for the best interest of all of us. And they also look out for property value of everybody here. The president also needs to make sure that if there are violations of bylaws, covenants, etc., that those actions are not accepted. That there must be some kind of, and I don't want to use the word punishment, but for lack of better words at the moment, there has to be something handed down to those who are actually violating the bylaws. And even if that's another board member, a committee member, they are the ones that needs to enforce those. But they also have to listen to the board members themselves. We live in a democracy. I do not believe in a president having total, ultimate power or whatever, absolute power. Ed was talking about the bylaw, it's 8.4 if anybody really cares, but 8.4 basically states that the president can act unilaterally. If that's the case, why do we even need a board? Why do we need 9 people? If the president is given that much power, it just makes no sense to me. So 8.4 needs to be thrown out, or in my opinion, needs to be thrown out because we elect people to the board. People, not one individual, we elect 9 people. So they should all have a say-so because they are looking out, supposedly, for our best interest. So the president needs not to have that much power.
I'm a little confused because it seems like you're saying both things. You're saying the president needs to handle all these things, but then you're saying, you know, he shouldn't act without the board. So what, you just, everything goes on hold till you get the board together to make a decision on something?
The president's responsibility is to make sure everything flows in a nice, smooth, cohesive way. If an emergency comes up, that president is going to have access to everybody on the board. I can't imagine too many things being a national emergency here without having the time to actually reach out to all the board members and say, hey, ice storm, for example. That was a nasty situation. But I'm sure the president would get with the board members, say, hey, you all got phone calls to make, get with them. Say, hey, we need to do something about this. And act accordingly. The president should not be having to handle the whole situation. That's why we have board members. So he is here to ensure that, like I said earlier, all the bylaws, covenants, etc., are adhered to. But he has help. He has the other board members to help him along that way. I don't know if I answered your question. Does that answer your question?
I'm still, don't quite understand why anybody would want to be president. Why not just be a board member and pass the buck, you know?
That's a question some other others have faced. John, did you have a question for us?
I have a question for Mr. Hammond, if I may. Mr. Hammond, in June 12th of 2015 at a meeting, you mentioned that the current president of the POA violated the covenants of Cumberland Cove POA and the laws and statutes of the state of Tennessee. However, you did not cite any specific Cumberland Cove POA covenant violation. The same is true for the state of Tennessee statute violations. So thus, I submit to you, Mr. Hammond, that I have reviewed the covenants numerous times since June 12th of 2015. I have not found any violations by the current president within those covenants. Furthermore, I have not found any violation by the current president regarding the state of Tennessee statutes. Would you please cite which covenants and/or state of Tennessee statutes were violated by the current